There were some folks last week before the debate who declared the presidential race over. Confession time. I was one of them. But after two debate performances, one of which goes down as one of the best and another goes down as one of the worst, it's time to recognize this race has begun anew. In a just-released post-debate Pew National poll, Mitt Romney is pulled ahead of the president among likely voters by 4 points, a stark contrast from the same poll conducted after the conventions, which showed the president ahead by 8. Could it be that seeing President Obama unscripted for the first time in 4 years left some voters less than satisfied? At a certain point, national polls become less important as focus shifts to the swing states, where even after his disastrous debate, President Obama can get some comfort that he remains ahead, even if only slightly. In Virginia, the president has a 3-point advantage over Mitt Romney, and in Wisconsin, the president still holds a 2-point lead. And as long as Romney has surrogates like Newt Gingrich, that probably won't change.
Standing on the stage with you in Arizona, this is what Mitt Romney said. Number one, I said today we're going to cut taxes on everyone across the country by 20%, including the top 1%. Mr. Speaker, you mentioned that your opponent, Mitt Romney, had a problem with being dishonest in the primary. My question is, was he dishonest when he said that?
I think it's clearly changed.
Joining me from Washington is Huffington Post Washington Bureau Chief Ryan Grim, and here in New York is Democratic strategist Zerlina Maxwell. Thank you both for your time tonight. Zerlina, let me start with you. You're a clear partisan in this.
Yes. The
president failed. It is the first time the public has seen him without the prompter, without when he needed to think on his feet, articulate, respond, be bombastic. He couldn't perform. Is the public looking at him saying, you know what, we may not be in love with you the same way we used to be?
Well, I clearly think he has high expectations, right? You know, he's soaring. He's the guy of soaring rhetoric from 4 years ago, and then even throughout his presidency. But at the same time, he's never been a strong debater, and so I think the expectations didn't meet the reality because we're looking to compare him to his speeches and not his debate performances, which weren't ever stellar.
Well, yeah, but it's one thing, Ryan, no ideas, no vision, not even a defense of his own record. I mean,
right.
this was, if you think about what you need to do going into a debate, you first defend your record, then you project some ideas, then you have a vision. He didn't have any of it. He was standing there like a punching bag. Ryan, what could possibly explain the performance of that by somebody who was clearly so smart and has been the president for 4 years?
Well, you know, a lot of people have tried to get inside his head, and if I were going to do that, I would say, you know, primarily he has a disdain for Romney, and he wanted to express it in kind of a dismissive way, like, I'm the president of the United States. Who does this guy think he is to be standing up on this stage with me? And I think that kind of explains why he was looking down at the podium the whole time, and just trying to almost ignore the fact that there was this guy to his right. You know, there were so many obvious times that he could have jumped in, like Mitt Romney says, gee, I need a better accountant. You know, it doesn't take an expert debater to think of, well, maybe there's something you could say in response to a line like that from Mitt Romney.
At that moment, all of us here, we were covering, I was screaming, no, I want your accountant, please. I'm paying 35%. You're paying 14. Give me him right now. You know, you're right. There were moments when humor, fact, argument, theory, anything to sort of puncture the balloon. But what you're saying is so interesting because Zerlina answered this question. I think Ryan's right. The president didn't seem as though he wanted to engage either with Mitt Romney or the public. And in a way, Mitt Romney came across as the personable guy who cared.
Right.
And
Which is so rare for Romney, right? Because personability is not
So what does Barack Obama do? He is the president of the United States, but right now he's also a candidate. He's a supplicant.
Right.
He is saying, and I've been a candidate, every voter wants you to say to him or her, I want your support, please. He can't do it.
The next debate, and even in the vice presidential debate, what they need to do is they need to, when Mitt Romney or Paul Ryan is saying something that's not true, at that moment they need to call them out and say, that is not true. You actually do have a $5 trillion tax cut in your plan. You actually are not going to cover people with pre-existing conditions in your health care plan. And that needs to happen at the moment that it is said at the debate and not you can't rely on fact checkers for afterwards.
You can't rely upon a next day story buried on page 15 or, you know, I'm make myself antiquated with an actual hard copy of the paper. But Ryan, Zerlina's right. You can't depend upon that. And so what does the president have to do next time? How does he evince this power, this passion, this sense of purpose that so clearly was missing?
I think people just want to see that he wants the job, that he wants to fight for them. If you look at it this way, if somebody's looking at somebody who won't even stand up for themselves, then what are the chances they're thinking that this person is going to stand up for me? And when you're watching Obama in this debate, you can finally see why it is that he was getting rolled day in and day out by the Republicans on Capitol Hill. You could say, hey, man, that is a guy I would like to be negotiating with.
Okay,
and
Ryan,
so,
I'm going to interrupt for a reason, because I think you just said something so critically important. And Zerlina, you as the partisan, I want you to respond to this. The performance that he gave us fit precisely the image of him that the Republicans have been trying to create.
Right.
Weak, vacillating, not able to think on his feet, and when he is pushed, he bends like a weak reed. That is why it was so treacherous. It wasn't just that he had an off night. It somehow metastasized the entire argument against him. So how does he somehow persuade us? Aaron Sorkin, or I guess, I don't know if it was actual or not, in a Maureen Dowd column over the weekend, she wrote it, where she had the mythical president saying, that is a lie, over and over again.
Right.
A hard punch to the gut. Nothing polite, just saying that is a lie. Does he need to do that now?
Yes, he absolutely needs to do that. But not only that, I think one of the things about the polling today that struck me was that Romney has all but closed the gender gap. And in a debate that didn't mention women's issues like pay equity and choice and reproductive health care for women, Obama needs to pivot into those topics which favor him. And, you know, I don't believe that an 18-point gap was closed, but he needs to use those moments to his advantage.
Well, he didn't mention anything relating to gender. He didn't mention 47%. He didn't say he didn't say the $716 billion was a lie. He didn't mention anything. He just looked down and went, not a stellar performance. Ryan, let's pivot. You know, as we must, to the vice presidential debate this week. Does it now fall on Joe Biden's shoulders to show that, you know, that he can be, you know, tough and aggressive and take apart Paul Ryan piece by piece?
Sure, it was already going to be easier for Joe Biden, certainly relative to 2008, when he didn't want to be seen as a bully, you know, when he was debating Sarah Palin. It's also easier for a vice presidential candidate to be the attack dog, because they don't need to look presidential by definition. But now there's this immense amount of pressure that if Paul Ryan walks off the stage without a black eye, practically, people are going to say, man, yeah, Biden was really supposed to bring it to him, but he didn't. When the narrative was before, Paul Ryan is this gifted wonk, and he's going to go out there and he's going to make mincemeat of Biden. So Obama's failure has kind of made Joe Biden's job that much more difficult.
All right, Zerlina, if I'm Paul Ryan, the first words out of my mouth are, Mr. Vice President, I want to quote you directly. The middle class has been buried for 4 years. Sir, you gave us your own scorecard on your own term in controlling the White House and the government of this country. You have graded yourself as a failure. How does Joe Biden dig himself out of that hole? That was his doozy.
It hasn't just been 4 years. And the last 4 years is a result of policies, the same which Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan are proposing, actually, which have buried the middle and working class. And so it's not you can't fix a problem that has been created in 30 years in 4 years. And so I think that he's framing it for
Zerlina, you're saying Bill Clinton, part of those 30 years was a failure too. Man, nobody satisfies you. Time to change the captain and the helm. Ryan, what's your answer if you're Joe Biden?
I think it's something to that effect. He could maybe joke about how he doesn't always say exactly what he's trying to say or put it in the most politic terms. But I think that's basically what you want to say. He wants to say that we had, 8 years of deregulation and policies that expanded the inequality gap, and that led to this bubble that led to the crisis, which led to this 4 years of a bubbling economy, and then you kind of try to pivot to the future. I'm not very good at that kind of thing. I'd probably get hammered by
well, let me tell you, here's the problem. I think Paul Ryan then turns back at him and says, you know what, Mr. Vice President, Washington, a gaffe is when you actually have the temerity to tell the truth. You told the truth, now you're stuck with it, and that's why you're going to be voted out. I mean, I think Joe Biden's going to do great, but I think that gaffe
was also in Washington for the past 4 years.
Well, who remembers
blocking
that?
the Jobs Act.
Washington Bureau Chief for the Huffington Post, Ryan Grimm, Democratic Strategist Zerlina Maxwell, thank you both for your insights tonight.
Thank you.
Politicians aren't the only ones rehashing the debate, so are the comedians. Viewfinder coming up next.